Each week here on the weekly show, one of the team will pick out something of interest that they've either watched, read or listened to that week in the world of Celtic media that they then recommend to our listeners. This week, James has something very close to home that we think many of our listeners here will enjoy. James, what have you got?
It's your good self and Martin O'Neill. So it was quite short notice, when you said you were, I think you were hopeful, but hadn't been confirmed, and then it was like, it's on tomorrow kind of thing, so I was looking forward to it with some anticipation. And I suppose what it does, and it'll be the same for everyone who's listened to it so far, it transports you right back to 2001. We were talking to Brian, who was in last week, and he was saying, he was just a wee bit younger when O'Neill arrived, I think. Is that fair?
Well, he's about the same age as me, which is very, very young.
I didn't know that. He's much older than I thought. Looking good, Brido.
Paddy's a young team.
Yeah. So whoever was talking about that, he was saying, what was O'Neill's legacy? And I said, well, for me, O'Neill's legacy was basically just deleting the 90s. Because see, when he came in, we were still running off of was it one league and whatever, couple of cups here and there. And O'Neill just came in and blew it all out the water, took us to Europe. We get into the kind of law side of things, took us back out of Europe, but O'Neill put us back on the stage. So just listening to that interview took me right back there. I mean, what was it like for yourself to do? It
was great, it really was. It was a real buzz, and if you could handpick somebody from Celtic's modern history to speak to, Martin O'Neill would be right up there. So I had about 40-45 minutes with him in studio last week, then spent a bit of time with him beyond that, which was great. He's got so much to tell, even out with the Celtic story, Paddy. So, the football genius that was Brian Clough and his ongoing search for Clough's approval over the years. He's won 2 European Cups, albeit he didn't play in one of the finals, but he's got a European Cup medal in his back pocket.
Not according to Peter Grant.
well, he played in the final in 1980. He talks about his background, his family's love for Celtic, his dad, who's nicknamed the Barber, his dad who was the barber in the local town in Kilrea. Talks about some of those key players from the Seville team, if you like, and we all know the big hitters, but he went on to talk about Jackie McNamara, the fact that he potentially owes him an apology because he underrated McNamara. He since went on to say, listen, the guy was a real warrior and he was such a huge part of things, but at first I maybe underestimated him. And there's so many other things. There's a wee story I asked him actually, and it's always niggled at me. So if you were to Google Martin O'Neill right now, in terms of some of the images that come up, whether it's Leicester, Celtic, Wycombe Wanderers, Villa, Sunderland, Ireland, he always or very often went out with a number 31 on his training top, and for the life of me I couldn't work it out. So Martin O'Neill was a winger type player. He would wear 7, 11, 10 sometimes, never 31, and it certainly wasn't in those days of squad numbers. So it was just, I meant to ask it in the recording, but I asked him myself, I says, what's the story there? He said, well, there is a story. He says, so he's quite superstitious by his very nature. And when they won that European Cup in 1980 with Forest, so they beat Kevin Keegan's Hamburg in the final at the Bernabeu, a couple of weeks later or whenever it was, all the players that took part were given a mini European Cup replica trophy and a plaque and a few different things as a keepsake. And his trophy, they were all stamped, and his was stamped with number 31. Now, first of all, he says, I don't know who the other 30 were, because there was only, I think, 14 players, so maybe Clough's banked a few or whatever. But so he had number 31, and such was his superstition that just became his lucky number. So that appeared in all his tracksuits. So as I say, Google it just now, you'll see 31 across the board. And I just thought it was an interesting wee insight. It's nothing football-y as such, but an interesting wee insight into his superstition.
I'd say that's maybe a bit of an exclusive for you, because I remember over the years talking to people about that, why it was 31, and there's loads of like theories about it. One of them being it's 13 backwards for the unlucky thing. He's just trying to beat that. There was just loads of different views on it, but he's been asked it quite a few times before and he's never given the answer.
Oh, really?
Aye, so there you go.
Unless it's off guard.
It might be in the book, or he might be getting a phone call.
It's not in the book. He told me while he was in my motor eating some sort of sandwich out of Tesco. Anyway, that's a separate story.
Tell me this, from the chat to him that day, because you beyond the interview, you'd maybe 4 or 5 hours in his company kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think's next for O'Neill?
So that is a good question. I presumed, when Martin O'Neill's 70 years of age, born in 1952, and had such a long and successful career in management. Then when you get to the point where you're writing the book and writing down your memoirs, you think that's it, party's over. But the suggestion is that he wants one more crack at it, management-wise, if the right job comes along. Now, I don't know, didn't get into what that might be, whether it's maybe a director of football type role, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, knowing the kind of guy he is, I think he wants to be hands-on. I think he wants to influence players. One of the very first parts of the book is brilliant, and we're going to do some promo stuff. We've got some signed copies which we'll give away in the weeks ahead. But there's a part of the book where he sees management as just a real privilege and a real chance, particularly in the 15-20 minutes leading up to kick-off, to really influence what's going to happen. He loves the psychology of it all. We know he's a smart guy. You know, he studied law at Queen's University in Belfast before taking on the football career, and he just sees football management as something that absolutely drives him. So yeah, you know, he could by all accounts get any sort of director of football at any big club, but I think he just wants one last crack at coaching, whatever that might be. Scotland, England, League of Ireland, I don't know. But he's still ambitious.
Would you take him back?
I think it'd be hard emotionally not
There's
to.
more chance of vacancy across the river in the summer.
Yeah, I don't think he would go there. But now listen, a fascinating guy, one of the most genuine characters you could meet, and just a real genuine pleasure to spend some time with him. Paddy, I was going to ask you a final question before we move on from this section. James, myself and Brido spoke last week about the Martin O'Neill era in general, and first of all, favourite players from that time aside from Henrik Larsson. Who would stand out for you?
It has to be Alan Thompson.
Yeah.
Every top I bought, I get Thompson in the back, just to be different for everyone getting Larsson, but more so Thompson. I think there was a quote for Henrik Larsson saying, if I didn't have Alan Thompson or Lubomir Moravcik, wouldn't even score half the goals I scored at Celtic. He was great. He knew exactly what it was to play for that team. He knew exactly what it was about, scoring against them, and he put everything onto the park. Just a great player, and just someone that I will always remember some of his great goals and just what he brought. And I remember even being dead excited for him when he got his England call up. He played, and it was a massive sign for Celtic that we could get players into that England team, and just a great player for us. And I'll never forget the anger of his first season. I don't know if you guys remember this, and you call me the young one, but I remember stuff like this, right? He'd said to John Gregory at Aston Villa he wanted to leave, Celtic were interested. Gregory put him on for 5 minutes in a European game to cup time.
Really?
Aye.
Rings a bell.
So he was cup time when he signed for Celtic for that season.
So obviously, easy answers for you there then in terms of your favourite player of the time, but what about favourite game? So we spoke again, the 6-2 game, the Boa Vista semi-final for James, beating Juventus 4-3 at Celtic Park. Listen, there's dozens, but any game that stands out for you?
I'd say the 6-2 game. I know it's an easy one to say, but I went with my brother Liam, and the two of us get the tickets on the day. My dad had used their season tickets elsewhere, thanks for that. And we got tickets on the day, but when we went up to the seat, we were way up the back of the Jockstein, and no, sorry, not the Jockstein, North Stand. We were just down at the corner. Basically the guy, the steward, was saying, come down with me. He took us down to the bottom, and we were right at the front row, but he'd moved us in behind the goals a little bit instead, because there was spare seats there. And when we scored the first, two of us end up in the newspaper. My brother's right next to Sutton celebrating, and it's just, I'll never forget that. Never forget that day.
If you can, you'll need to dig that out.
I'm not in it. All you see is my arms, but you see my brother Liam.
Are they definitely your arms?
100%.
Right. Let's share your arms in the socials just for sure. No, it's great stuff. And listen, you could spend hours just talking about memories from that time, young fans, old fans, or whatever. But just a really special time in Celtic's history, and it was great to speak to Martin O'Neill last week. So the episode with Martin O'Neill is only available to subscribers of the Celtic Exchange Plus, but if you're not yet subscribed, here's how you can listen now for free. So we're offering a 7-day free trial of the Celtic Exchange Plus right now, which means that all new subscribers won't be charged a single penny until day 8. There's a few sign-up options, including one which offers our full subscription package for the equivalent of just £3.75 a month, and you can find all of the information and the 60-second sign-up process at thecelticexchange.supercast.com. So visit the site now to enjoy the full interview with Martin O'Neill, as well as everything else that we offer to our subscribers.